Hello and welcome to another episode of UpGrade with Maria Kay, the podcast where your success, freedom and happiness get a weekly boost. Now, for those of you who don't know, I'm Maria Kay and I help people all over the world create the life that they not only deserve but also desire, and converting dreams into everyday reality so that the life they wake up to is so compelling they cannot wait to jump out of bed every morning. If you are eager to feel that way also, please stick around. If you're just joining us and coming across our weekly podcast, I do invite you to go back into the archives, explore, have fun, take what you need so that you can really have as rich an experience as possible with your personal life upgrade. Today's podcast topic has been inspired by the countless people that I speak to on a very regular basis who are seeking to create change in their life, who are seeking to improve their daily living, whatever area that may fall into: relationships, career, finances, parenting skills, health, wellness, geography, location, pretty much a long list. And I've been inspired to share some of my experiences and takeaways with having had many conversations with beautiful people around the world. The topic today is how to take a blind leap of faith without crashing. And I'm passionate about this topic because without the ability to do that myself in my life would look totally different, absolutely worlds apart. And one of the big questions that I hear time and time again when somebody is really ready to jump in full force to upgrading their life, and when push comes to shove, more often than not, and that this doesn't just apply to the people I've spoken to, I know it happens across the globe, and I have been there at times in my own life, but I definitely turned it around. And the big question is, what if it doesn't work? Another version of that is, what if I fail? What if it doesn't work? What if I fail? And you know what? That's a really valid question. Growing up, most of us are taught to weigh up the pros and cons. Most of us are taught to do a bit of damage control, to be sensible, to take everything into account and not really take a risk, especially when we don't have all of the answers laid out on the table. Now, I've taken countless risks in my life. Some of them have, let's use the word, perceivably failed, right? But a lot of them, most of them, have been huge successes. Now, let's talk about the failures for a second. I don't believe there's a right or a wrong, a success or a failure. I strongly believe that everything we do, every move we make, every step we take, that's a song, right? Every forward movement is exactly that. And whether it gets you super close to your bigger vision or where you want to be, or only a little bit closer, either way, you've still taken action, you've still moved forward. And if you can develop an ability to draw the lessons, to allow every single experience to shape you, to mold you, to be your teacher, and also have the ability to find the lesson and the diamond in every situation, then there really hasn't been anything lost. Especially if you are looking at it from a vantage point of personal and spiritual development, molding who you are day by day into the person that you need to be in order to live your upgraded life. Now, most of us are born pretty free, pretty full of spirit, passion, and courage. And yet we walk through life and we become conditioned and draped with layer upon layer upon layer of limitations, limiting beliefs, almost like a dark cloak, layer upon layer upon layer. So we can't remember the truth. And as we move forward, taking those little mini leaps of faith, as it were, we're then able to remove layer after layer so that we reveal the truth of who we are. And this is highly necessary. So yes, have I lost in life? Have I failed? Have I made mistakes? Absolutely. But I bless those mistakes or those wrong turns, as you could possibly put them, because they have given me the information, the light, the nudge, the direction, the clarity that I have needed to go forth strongly and directly to where I know I need to be. And I can truly say that each and every decision I have made, and I'm going to sort of put my neck on the line and say, even down to my marriage that ended after 8 years, even down to the business decisions that we made as a couple during our married time that tipped us right over the edge for many different reasons. One of the main reasons being that ex-hubby really wasn't a good business mind and had his own issues with finances and being an over compulsive spender and so on and so forth. Even down to that decision or those series of decisions that I made that left me really in a pickle at the end of the marriage, let's say. As a side note, I do share a lot more about my past and how I've got to where I am today in previous podcasts. If you're new and you haven't heard those, do jump back and listen. I highly recommend if you want to kind of get into the picture a little more clearly. They're all available in the archive, so it's very easy for you to locate them. So I can honestly say that even those series of decisions, just taking that group of decisions by an example, have been a blessing. They've been a blessing. It's a bit like getting on the golf buggy when you're out playing golf, because you know without getting on that golf buggy you wouldn't be able to get where you need to go to, or it would take you a long time. So as by way of necessity, I followed my heart. I took a leap of faith. And yes, I did have many, many moments where I sat in regret and in deep despair as to why. It's easy to blame yourself. It's easy to point the finger at other people, your parents, your colleagues, your bosses, business partners, children, right? When things don't go as you would have loved them to have gone, that really doesn't get us anywhere. And having the ability to flip things over, find the gem in amongst the craziness and learn from those wrong turns, as it were, is paramount. So I've taken many leaps of faith, blind leaps of faith that on the outside could possibly be perceived, and I can tell you they have been perceived by people that know me. I've heard it many, many times. Maria, you've made many mistakes in your life. I won't say who said that, but it's been said. And even up until recently, I've heard those words. So to the outside world, it can be perceived as a mess, a shambles, wrong, 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 irresponsible, you name it. But the fact that you are here listening to this today indicates that you are an awakened person, that you are in some way, shape or form in a process of raising your consciousness. And when you step into that way of living, raised consciousness, super awake, even if you're right at the early stages of this journey, you will begin to develop an ability to see the truth of things, see things for exactly how they are. So a failed marriage as a blessing, because without that experience, we wouldn't be the person we are today. Perhaps we wouldn't have the children that we have today who have taught us to be who we need to be, who have challenged us, who have become our super conscious, divine spiritual teachers, as one example. Now, most people, if I was to say, conjure up an image in your mind's eye of a leap of faith, what would it look like to you? For most of us, we would see perhaps somebody jumping off a cliff or a hillside, or taking a big leap into a body of water without knowing what's beneath, what's underneath, what lies ahead. And very often it can feel like that. And perhaps the early leaps of faith that I took in my life were that way. I've come to develop a slightly different way of taking leaps of faith. And without changing the title completely, because I do like the title, it does conjure up an image of courage. And whichever format you decide to take, courage is something that you really will need. Whether you're taking that huge leap of faith off the cliff side, or whether you're following something that I'm going to suggest as an analogy just now. And that is, if you imagine yourself hiking on terrain that's actually not super sturdy enough for you to make the hike, but for it to be super necessary for you to be highly aware and conscious every step that you take, because the ground underneath you, it's almost chalk-like. It's quite crumbly, right? So every time you set your foot in front of you, you kind of need to spend a few seconds judging whether you can place your full weight in that spot or not. Now, I believe that that is the new modern way of taking a leap of faith, especially if you are on a spiritual journey. Now, nearly all of us in the world are, my loves. Most people don't know, they're not aware of it, but I'm just going to take it as a given that you are. And if you find this quite a surprise, or it's all new to you, chances are this is your moment. This is your moment. This is kind of your awakening moment. Wow, there's something different that I can now start to operate inside of, using the principles, the concepts of. So back to the leap of faith. I want you to now close your eyes and split your mind's eye vision into two parts. And on the left-hand side, conjure up the original image of that traditional leap of faith off the cliffside into a humongous body of water, whether it's a lake or an ocean. And on the right-hand side, that uneven terrain, that hike that you're going on, your nice sturdy boots, all the gear and equipment that you could need, taking each step with super awareness, super consciousness, knowing that your initial judgments may be good. You may press down with your foot on that next step and find that initially it's super strong and you're good to go, but there's always that chance that you may slip, you may fall. But as long as you have taken that step, once you've consulted your inner being, that part of you inside of you that knows, it's intelligent, then whether you slip or you stay standing, either way, it's exactly where you need to be. Exactly what needed to happen. Because as you evolve, as you move forward towards, or as you move forward and peel off those layers, as I mentioned earlier, that were draped upon you as you grew up, as you moved through childhood and teenage years and as a young adult, whatever age you find yourself at, it's now time to remove those layers. So as you move forward, step by step by step, whichever is the outcome, you know that it's perfect. It's perfect. Now I want to talk about where we get our inspiration from. How do we come to the point of having to make a decision as to whether we take a leap of faith or not? What are the circumstances that can lead up to that point? Now, for each of us, it will be very different on the outside. It'll look different. For example, one of my most recent leaps of faith in the last sort of 18 months or so was relocating to the other side of the world, to a place I'd never ever been to. Actually, when I say it now, it does seem quite crazy. So a place I'd never ever been to, not anywhere in the country, let alone that specific part of the country. I relocated from the UK with my family to India. Now, granted, we did relocate to a beach where we spent 4 or 5 months living on a beach. And the chain of events that led up to that, if I strip down all of the outside kind of hustle and bustle and craziness, what we were left with and what we will all have in common is an internal pull. A nudge from your inner being or the universe, use whatever language you prefer, but a nudge from your inner being that, hey, and if you can imagine an elbow in your ribs right now, hey, this, whatever we've got going on now isn't working, or it's past its sell-by date, or you've outgrown it, or you're ready for the next lesson, or you're ready to upgrade. You've done, as was the case for me, you've created as much success as you possibly can where you are now, Maria. You've helped as many people as you possibly can in the arena that you're in right now, the frame of mind, the experience that you've had, the studies, the qualifications. It's now time for you to take that leap of faith so that as you're encouraging your clients and students to do so, you can be fully in your truth, fully congruent, in essence, walking your talk. So the general theme for everybody, every single one of us who finds themselves perhaps at that crossroads, left goes to the comfort zone, that general recurring commonality is that inner guidance. Now, it can come in the form of dissatisfaction, unfulfillment, unhappiness, or it can come in the form of inspiration. It can come in the form of interest, passion, almost as if you are ready to drink up the next batch of life-giving juice. Or you can be experiencing a combination of all of those things. Now, for me, it was the case. It was an interest. It was a real pull. And having spent all of that time there in India, which we've now made a decision for it to be our winter home. We're done with British winters. In fact, pretty much done with British summers, but that's another story. But for now, the plan is to spend each and every winter out there for the foreseeable future. But aside from that kind of I'm done with winter notion, there was a deeper meaning for me. The fact that the predominant religion out in India is Hinduism, and the fact that I am highly called to study and take part in many of the rituals, the yoga, and go deep into not only my own spiritual journey, but also picking up along the way how I can enhance my work, how I can show up bigger, better, stronger for the people that rely on me to be their coach and mentor, the person that nudges them along on their spiritual, personal and upgrade journey. So there are many reasons that you could be being called forward, right? But the big indicating factor is a kind of unrest internally, maybe feeling unsettled, and that can sometimes show up as unhappiness, sometimes even depression. So if you've been feeling that way, then I highly recommend that you take some time to delve deep inside the inner world of your being. What is it that you are being told? What messages are you being sent that perhaps you're not listening to? Now, once you've got a little bit clearer on all of that, then you can decide, and what I call this is an inspired decision, right? Intelligently informed via your inner being. You're not listening to the advice of somebody completely random, watching a webinar, a seminar. Not even your coach or your mentor will be able to give you an outright piece of advice. Any good coach or mentor, in my opinion, will help facilitate the birth of the truth. And that's exactly what my coach did for me. Totally blessed and grateful to her. And this is what I do for the people that work with me as and trust me as their facilitator or mentor or coach. So when we talk about blind leaps of faith, we're not talking about blowing, thousands of dollars or euros or pounds on gambling. We're not talking, well, I'm specifically not talking about getting that tattoo on a drunken night out. I'm talking about deep, inspired, purposeful decisions that we are being called to look at, to face up to explore, that come from the very depths of your soul, the deepest, perhaps unexplored parts of you. And this is why so many of us, because going deep, deep down is absolutely petrifying at times. That's why so many of us don't move forward. We stay stuck. And it is so petrifying. In the lead up to the big decision, the most recent one anyway, that I think is more relevant to talk about now, when we moved to India, it was about 6 weeks from start to finish. So that's from the decision being made to actually waking up with my feet in the sand, looking out into the Indian Ocean with coconut trees all around me, drinking my fresh coconut water 6 weeks from start to finish. And it really was a period of time with such mixed emotions. I just want to give you a bit of an insight so that you don't go into anything that you're deciding thinking it's going to be a walk in the park or a bed of roses, because it probably won't be. Everything that could possibly come to test you will. And that may come in the people around you, sort of, giving their 2 pennies worth. It's, oh, that's a bit risky, or are you sure, or what about this, what about that? Or other influences, perhaps logistics, finances. Very often I'll have people desperate to jump into my 12-month UpGrade program. And they're literally ready to book their first session with me, their deep dive session with me. But then they get paralyzed by either what will my spouse say, how will it work with being a responsible parent, how will I fit it in with work, how will I afford it? Those, what I call logical or illogical fears that come in and can get in the way of divine flow. Because what is coming through as a desire for you, for me, for everyone around the world is, more often than not, as long as it's not, let's go and blow all our money on the horses, or let's go and get a tattoo on a drunken night out, or whatever the equivalent is for you around the world. As long as it's not that impulse, ego-led idea, if that desire is born from deep inside of you, then it is totally right. It is totally meant to carry you forward towards your true life, your true self. And very often things will go wrong. Things will be tough. We didn't know whether we were going to be granted a visa for India. And we were backing and forthing to the visa place for a good few weeks before everything just fell into place. Literally, probably about a week before, or a week or two before we left. And there were times when I literally had to surrender it over, hand it over to the divine, to God, the universe, use whatever terminology you prefer, and just be in a place of openness and surrender. And that also indicates that it is totally meant to be. If things fall into place for you, if you've sort of taken that leap, or you've started to go on that hike in the uneven, chalky terrain, and you find yourself continuously moving forward with courage, with passion, then you know you're in the right place. But that level of uncertainty is something you must get used to. You might be launching a business in an arena that you've never worked in before. Or perhaps you're launching your holistic business. Perhaps you've decided to leave your full-time job. I speak to so many people who are in that position, who are so drained and unhappy in their full-time job, and they have this other ability or skill that they are desperate to share with the world. In fact, they know it needs to be shared. But fear gets in the way. Fear and the chatter, the limitations of the world, of consciousness, the people around them, get in the way. Now, the bigger the leap, the bigger the spiritual lesson for you. We are here on this planet to peel away those layers, to become more of who we are, whether that's living on a beach every winter so that you can be the happiest possible version of you, or whether that's opening your own business so that you can have the freedom to raise your kids in a way that is right for you and your family. Whatever it may be for you, pay attention to that desire, that interest, that pull. Because that is the universe's way of sending you a chauffeur-driven car, right? A chauffeur-driven car to exactly where you want to be. Sometimes it'll be in the form of a rickety old bus, and you may break down a few times along the way, as did I in my last big leap living in India. We had to contend with troublesome visa applications. We had to contend with the heart-wrenching decision to leave our 4 family cats. We had to contend with a big upheaval for the children from school. Really huge things back then. Now they seem like a dot in the distance. We had to contend with illness. I became quite ill in the lead up to our trip, but I knew it's my body's way of releasing and just realigning with the new energy of this current, that particular current upgrade. Our bodies are so intelligent, and that includes our mind, our emotions. So I'm going to leave you with a question. What do you need to pay attention to today? What is calling you forth? I'm not going to suggest that you take a leap of faith today. What I'd like to encourage you to do is to begin an internal dialogue, though. Start that internal conversation. It may last a day, it may last 7 days, it may take you into weeks and months. That's okay, but do not linger there for too long. Usually, when something is ripe and ready to appear, be revealed, take process, call you forth in life, when it's ready, when it's really ripe, you will not want to linger or stay around for too long. Just know that those messages are sacred. They are like receiving instructions, sacred instructions through the post. If a letter came through your door or into your post box, which was marked as urgent, highly important, I can guarantee you would open it and you would read it really intently. I want you to do the same with your internal messages. Now, here's a little tip. If you prefer to read things in writing, then grab yourself a piece of paper or a journal, and as you go deep inside, write things down, a little bit like channeling. So basically like transcribing your inner message onto a piece of paper, and then put it away, and then next day perhaps come back to it, read it, and take it on board. Take notice of it. Take it seriously. You deserve to live the life that you desire, because the life that you desire is exactly the life that you were supposed to live. It's not it's not by chance, it's not a coincidence, it's not an accident. But sometimes in order to live the life we were supposed to live, we do need to take that huge blind leap of faith. Because along the way, we have lessons to learn, layers to shed, and truth to experience. If you haven't already joined me over on the Facebook group, now's your time. Simply search Upgrade with Maria Kay, jump in there, and let me know. Let me know what your leap of faith is calling you forth towards. I am so eager to hear from you, and it's always a huge honour. You can get support in that group. You can hear from me. You can hear from the other members, or you can even suggest any possible future topics that you'd like to hear. Until next time, I'm leaving you with the courage to start exploring